Very, very good morning, everyone. Charles here, FRGNT Daily Chart Analysis. It is a brand new week 14, I do believe, towards the end of the month. Time is just approaching 20 minutes to 10 here in Milan. The clocks have gone forward, so I'm now UTC +1. Nevertheless, the charts remain the same. We begin using the DXY. First and foremost, I'll have to apologize with my blocked nose. I am suffering heavily with allergies, but we will get the charts out to you nevertheless. So, where are we? The DXY, of course, last week we closed bullish above that weekly 50 MA, really just providing the guidance of what we already knew, that the dollar is incredibly bullish and it's very difficult to trade against it, to be quite honest. So therefore, using that theory, taking that information across all of the cross pairs, then of course our highest probable positions are going to be, in my opinion, coming from shorting the pound against the dollar, shorting the euro against the dollar, and shorting the Aussie dollar against the dollar. But nevertheless, as you can see, based on this 50-minute time frame, the DXY does indeed have pullbacks. Therefore, in terms of short-term long positions, i.e. on GU, EU and AU, they are still valid, but you do certainly have to understand that any long position you are taking against the DXY in terms of a cross pair trade is simply, in my opinion, going to be a pullback on the DXY for what could then well be continued long positions. Then you ask, well, where could potentially the DXY go to? Well, whatever is happening in the world, clearly it is of benefit for the US dollar. But with that said, where could the US dollar go based on smart money concepts? Well, we certainly have this wick imbalance to the left-hand side created on that weekly time frame. And then more importantly, we have what would, in my opinion, just be a recovery of the US dollar. If we bring that weekly time frame up, or if we zoom it out, the US dollar has every potential to be up at these highs. Therefore, as it has looked to have rejected this order block down at these lows, now we'll be looking to take price back up to the order block in the other direction now, and that is situated here. So let's bring that in terms of the daily and see what that really looks like. In fact, we'll go to the 15 to see what that will look like better in terms of if the DXY is looking to reject this current area. How would I get my confirmation to get that illustration in order to take higher probable long positions on the cross pair? Well, this is not something that I am anticipating anytime soon, but nevertheless, using smart money concepts, we focus on an area in the market where we determine is a key structure point. So based on basic 15-minute pattern, i.e. trend, we've made a higher high from this area. Therefore, this position here becomes the most recent higher low. It's been confirmed as a result of that higher high. Therefore, if price fails to break below this area, we are very much still bullish on the 50-minute time frame. Now, if that said, if the opposite happens and the 50-minute breaks that key structure point, of course, that is not a time to look for an immediate position. What I would then foresee to happen is price retrace, potentially all the way back up to these highs, where I'll be looking for confirmation on that DXY to suggest that the DXY is indeed bearish. But again, do I believe that could be the case? Well, based on fundamentals, no, and currently based on technicals, also no. Better guidance as well, potentially coming into next week. Let's say if we do get a 4-hour candle to close below that area, then what will happen on the 15-minute time frame is simply what we've just described: a bearish 15-minute trend, the closing below that 4-hour 50 MA, giving us the certainty that we will at least be trading alongside an EMA, then for that pullback for the continued short position after that lower low. So what do we have today on my list? Well, as we've said, the short positions on the cross pairs, in my opinion, are the way to go for us this week. So whether that is coming from this 15-minute order block or up at these highs, it's all dependent on what the DXY wants to do. So looking at this pair GU, what do we have? Again, illustrating that the DXY is certainly king, we have now on the weekly time frame closed dramatically below that weekly 50 MA, throwing almost 4 weeks, a month's worth of price action wicks to the high, where price is simply struggling to close above that area. And of course, we know why. That is based solely, in my opinion, on the strength of that DXY. So, based on the higher time frames, weekly in particular, I am looking for continued shorts on GU in terms of the highest probable trading position. So what do we have at the moment? We've had a snap in the market coming from this area, lower low created. As I work my way back up that leg, here is what I will accredit to that lower high. So if price comes into that area, of course, I'll be looking for a lower time break of structure, some confirmation, potentially even on the 15-minute time frame, before then looking to take that short. With that said, supporting that short position, you can see here on the bottom left-hand chart, 4-hour 50 MA, we've got a 4-hour order block. That was slightly tapped, but nevertheless, once we refine that area down, here is where we are, that 15-minute order block within that area. So that is a very good short position, in my opinion. And if price does look to come back up there as a result of DXY weakness on the short-term basis, then I'll be certainly looking to take that short position as a result of anticipating DXY strength for the remainder of at least this trading period. In terms of the long position, as we said, taking longs will be very short term, in my opinion, based on the bullishness of the DXY. And with that said, we do have nice long areas in the market on GU to be looking to take a trade from. Excuse me. So on the daily time frame, I can see price is very clearly range bound. Therefore, if I want to take a long position, I know that has to come from as low as I possibly can in order to have my stop loss in a safe place. So what does that look on the 4-hour time frame? What we did have was a 4-hour order block that was respected, and price actually moved off from that area. So that's good news. Unfortunately, the bad news is that there isn't a 4-hour order block available for me to begin that process again for the start of the week. I'm not going to drag this order block across and add that to my confluence for the trade. But what I will do is see if I can refine that area down and see what I have on the lower time frame. This is exactly that area, that 15-minute order block that still remains available for us to take a potential long position from after receiving confirmation from the DXY. So what that's going to look like is the DXY, by the time price gets down here, the DXY is going to be looking incredibly bullish. And then I want to look on the DXY for it to start breaking intricate intraday breaks of structure, give us that pullback on GU as well, which will give us a pullback on the DXY up at the highs, and then that will allow the DXY to show signs of weakness then as it comes back up to this area. So again, a lot of confirmation, in my opinion, is going to be required in order to take a long position, simply because as price comes down here, the DXY is going to be extremely bullish, and it's just not something that I'm prepared to trade against. Nevertheless, although I want to take a short, and I understand to take a short, price needs to push up to that high, it doesn't necessarily mean I will be taking this long position. But nevertheless, if the setup presents itself, I potentially may well at reduced risk, in all honesty, because betting against that DXY, as I said for the 5,000th time already, is quite risky business, in my opinion, at the moment. So the only way to mitigate risky business is to simply reduce your risk and trade responsibly. What do we have now? Next, sorry, that was an email coming through. EU, much of the same like GU, for example. In fact, let's go to AU, because AU for me is a nice cross pair that's giving us some good indications that potentially GU and EU could slide quite dramatically to the downside, as we've seen here. We can see even on the weekly time frame on AU that price was being held in that range after that area. However, last week's candle closed bearish engulfing, and what that has done has broken out of the range on that daily time frame, which we see, and also corresponding to that weekly as well. So what we have now is where price was range bound on that 4-hour time frame, and price is melting down to the downside. But what I'll be expecting is not to jump on this immediately. Expect a pullback into an area of imbalance. So I've got a 4-hour order block just here. The reason for selecting that order block is at the moment, that is the highest 4-hour order block that I have available within the daily order block that was created as a result of that weekly candle bearish closure. So it makes sense to start looking in that area, in my opinion. With that said, it's supported with the daily 50 MA supporting the shorts, and also prices trending below the 4-hour 50 MA. So therefore, if I'm going to take a short position, I am supported with confidence that price should look to come into that 4-hour and daily 50 MA, reject it, and then continue its bearish trend to the downside. So AU for me is a bit of a favorite, to be quite honest, in terms of shorts. But again, what that is going to mean is, in order for AU to push back up, I need to see in the market some DXY weakness coming out. What that DXY weakness will indeed be, could be, it will just be a pullback on that 15-minute time frame. So in order to take this short position, I believe monitoring that DXY is very, very, very important. Apologies, my nose is completely blocked, but trading over everything at the moment. So once we refine that 4-hour order block down, what do we have? Where are we sat? Right here up at those highs. As I've said, you can see that 4-hour 50 MA and a daily 50 MA refined in that area with that 15-minute order block. Again, why that 15-minute order block? Well, from my analysis this morning, could be incorrect, that was the only valid and available 15-minute order block in that leg. And I will double check myself. And yeah, that's correct. So this is the only 15-minute order block available in that leg. Of course, there are other 15-minute order blocks as we start to push our way down. For example, we have one, no, that is not an order block there either. So for quite a considerable amount within that leg, there is only that one 15-minute order block. So it's very much so a valid point of interest in my opinion. Also because it's refined within the daily 4-hour and the 15. So again, a highly valuable point of interest. So this 15-minute order block in the middle of nowhere, again, it's the only 15-minute order block in this most recent leg that's available. And if the DXY is going to have that short pullback, I want to be able to take a position to take benefit from the fact that we've identified the pullback on the DXY and price is in a valid point of interest on a cross pair. AU, in my opinion, is where price is looking best for continued shorts along aligning with the DXY weakness. So that's why that 50-minute order block is there available. So again, I will need to see, regardless of trading with that DXY strength, I still will require confirmation at that area. This will not be a limit order of any sort or an instant execution. I'm definitely going to be waiting confirmation. Why also do I like that trade? Well, just looking at basic price action, we have lower lows, lower highs, lower low in the market, lower low. It's going to be lower high, lower low is confirmed. Price came back up, and then it's just trickled its way down. As a result of this push here, lower low, here becomes, or rather lower low, here becomes a point of interest by way of just basic structure. So after that lower low created, price is pulling back, giving us that lower high. We hope for a lower low continuation. And then when we marry that up nicely with the DXY, does it make sense? In my opinion, yes, it certainly could do. If the DXY succumb to its point of interest down here, which would be slight DXY weakness, that would then pull up into AU for that short continuation, where we would have a long continuation here on the DXY. So far, AU and the DXY, in my opinion, are very much so on side and suited and working alongside one another. So we've gone through GU, quickly take over EU as well. Much of the same, to be honest. The only difference here is that EU is in my opinion, is not in a point of interest just yet to be looking for a long. Last week, price came into a 50-minute order block, and yes, it tapped it last week. We had the reaction, but we didn't break any immediate structure points. Therefore, for me personally, we're still very much so bearish. And again, using a most basic form of structure, we can identify that we've had that lower low in the market created. Price came up, wick to the high, so we did not have a closure above this area. We've now made that lower low from the area. Therefore, basic structure after a lower low created, expecting price to pull up into that area to make that lower high for the lower low continuation. Does that make sense based on structure? Absolutely, yes, it does. We then have the 4-hour 50 MA making its way to support that short position as well, which is good news. The only thing we don't have in terms of confluence here is higher time frame bias in terms of order blocks. By way of 4-hour order block, we don't have that. So we're using the 4-hour 50 MA. So if you are going to say, Charles, would you rather take AU shorts or EU shorts? I'd much prefer AU shorts overwhelmingly. Nevertheless, the weekly time frame, again, closed bearish on that weekly 50 MA, so be looking for continuation weakness, retesting that weekly 50 MA before heading down. Retesting that weekly 50 MA on the Monday simply could happen, and what that would be is price coming into that area. We would then immediately be retesting that weekly 50 MA before potential lower low continuation. So EU is okay, and AU is most certainly a favourite at the moment. So we've done AU, GU, EU, and the DXY. And to be honest, guys, that is what I'm speculating on today. I'm not looking at US dollar CAD at the moment. I don't want to be enticed into an order block short as a result of, I do quite agree, UCAD is in a valid point of interest. Let me show you the weekly time frame so you can gauge what I'm looking at. This weekly order block price is now in that area. So of course, smart money concepts, we always be looking to trade from higher time frame order blocks, refine those areas down, breaks of structure, etc., etc. We're in that order block. However, look how last week's weekly candle closed. Bullish engulfing above that weekly 50 MA, above the daily 50 MA, above the 4-hour 50 MA. We are most certainly bullish. Therefore, any trade that I take now, although it looks good based on time frames, based on order blocks, I know that I am simply trading what is going to be, potentially, in my opinion, just a lower high, higher low, before a higher high continuation. And when you have better options such as EU, AU, and even GU to a certain extent, I don't think there's any need to be looking for short positions. The only reason that I can't necessarily look for the long position is because I will be going against a fundamental part of my trading strategy, which is taking a position against the higher time frame bias. So the higher time frame bias in terms of order blocks is certainly telling me I should be shorting. But using all the confluence that I have based on the strength of the DXY, I don't want to be shorting. So therefore, if I can't short and I can't long, I simply can't do anything. You guys see here, it's got a red flag, so I won't be trading that at all. Until we get some closures above that weekly order block, or better still, price comes right up into the highs of this weekly order block, where by the time price gets into these refined areas, then I would potentially be looking for a reversal or a turnaround on the DXY. But at the moment, looking where the DXY could potentially go to, we've got this wick imbalance at the very least before it then gets up to its own weekly higher time frame order blocks. I don't think US dollar CAD is going to be ready for shorts long term anytime soon. If price was to come all the way back down here, then I would consider a long into the higher time frame order blocks. But as we stand, if price makes after this higher high a higher low, I can't take this long position. If anybody else does, I can quite understand why you would like to, why you would want to, but it's just a fundamental part of my trader strategy, unfortunately. So that's US dollar CAD, which I haven't got into. GCAD, I don't really mind GCAD, to be honest, but again, using what's available, knowing that AU is a clean favourite for me. For me, GCAD is just simply in a range on that 4-hour time frame. We're still yet to have a bearish or bullish closure above that area. And then if you look at how the 50 EMAs are completely stacked in terms of supporting longs, which conflicts as well with shorts, it's quite a confusing pair, GCAD, at the moment. Last week's weekly candle closed above the weekly 50 MA. Price is being supported above as well with the daily 50 MA, as well as the 4. So actually all EMAs are on side for long positions. However, again, what we can say is I'll be longing into an area where I really prefer to take shorts from. However, shorts just don't make sense at the moment. So what I'm going to be doing is just waiting for price to develop. I recognise we're in a range, and I don't fancy trading a range at the moment, particularly because we have better pairs that are aligning. So nothing for me on GCAD. And EG, well, this is a pair that I'm just going to stop trading, unfortunately. I think it just plays around a little bit too much for me to waste my time on it. So I won't even bother breaking it down. So that's the analysis for today, ladies and gentlemen, Monday the 30th of March. Thank you for bearing with my blocked nose and my allergy-fueled breakdown. And just a quick note to thank you all very much for your patience, support across all of the channels. I do appreciate them. And for you guys taking a look at the FRGNT daily chart analysis on TradingView, it is very much so appreciated. All the very best for your trading journey. You will hear from me soon, hopefully when the allergies as well subside a little bit and you can understand me a little bit more. All the very best, team. Good luck in your trading journey. Take care. Charles.